I hope wherever you are, you're doing well. My name is Nima, and today you're watching the very first episode, the real episode of Talk to Me podcast. Today I'm going to be interviewing my friend Poorshad, a future med school student, a future doctor, and we're going to be introducing a little bit of him and myself today and for the next couple of videos so that you can also get to know me. And we're going to be touching on a couple of key points that we think are the most crucial in the last 4 to 6 years of our lives, and something that I hope is going to bring you a little bit of value and get you inspired and motivated. So without any further ado, I'm going to talk to my friend Poorshad about some of the very preliminary things to his move to Canada and some of the things that he's experienced. So, hi Poorshad, how are you?
Stop. We were not prepared for this question or any question because we took many takes and we were almost never ready. And just watch it.
Podcast episode.
We're doing well.
You might have to replace me for the first episode, guys.
No, I've already released that it'll be you. Although it does show adaptability.
It's a lot of pressure.
I mean, bro.
Yeah. Anyways, we eventually got through it. And now, how are you, Poorshad?
Great. It's truly exciting to be on the first episode of Talk to Nima. Or Talk to Me.
Yes. It is both. It is both.
Talk to Nima, Talk to Me. Okay. And yeah, just had a long journey since I immigrated to Canada when I was 6 years old. Since then, I played a lot of competitive sports, mainly tennis. Competed at a high level and been coaching at a high level recently. And then also, same time, been on the path to get into medical school and start my career as a physician. And finally, I'm excited to get to the point where I've got some acceptances. I'm waiting to find out either if I'm going to Canada or the States, which both will be exciting. Both have their pros and cons. And throughout this journey, both in sports and in medicine, I've made mistakes, I've learned many lessons, and I'm just hoping to share some of those with the viewers today.
Yes, thank you very much. So, like Poorshad said, he's a first-generation immigrant, right?
Yes, my parents and I moved here when I was 6 years old. And honestly, it's a pretty good age to come. At that time, it's easy to adapt. I think the older you get, it's harder to pick up the language, the culture, and that. But I felt like it was pretty smooth. But my parents, of course, it was harder for them. They had to work really hard when we came here. And I'm grateful that they put me in a position where I can try to be successful.
Yeah. So, first-generation immigrant, came to Canada. You've met a lot of people. You've been to a lot of places. You've done a lot of things in Canada. And like you said, you came here at the age of 6.
Yeah.
And that's a very good age. I came here at the age of 7.
Yeah.
And at that age, what I find is that you're so fluid.
Yeah.
And you can take so much in, almost like a sponge.
Yeah,
and so we are both very modernized and very much adapted to the Western way of living and the language. And I'm really excited today to be talking to you a little bit about the things that we experience, especially here, United States and Canada and other such places like Europe that I feel like we all have in common.
Yeah, of course. And I feel like the thing about me and you is that we a little bit hybrid in that sense, where we can go back to our roots and our Persian culture as well.
Yes.
And when we're with our family, with our Persian friends, we're really intact with that culture. And then we also have the ability to shift into the culture we were kind of raised in our schools and our Canadian friends, Different mental framework, whole different personality basically, I feel like. Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, first when I moved here, I had already started playing tennis in Iran. And when I moved here, I just kept on taking lessons, and my dad had already played the sport, so
Your dad was a tennis.
He would play it, but not professionally, just recreationally with his friends, and that's how I got into it. I would go watch him. And after that, he got me a coach, and then my coach right away said, "Oh, this kid, he's pretty good. You guys should put him in tennis more seriously and stuff." And then when we came to Canada, my parents found out that Tennis Canada was having a tryout for under 9 players. So kids who are under the age of 9, almost 400, 500 kids showed up for the tryouts. And
Wow.
out of those kids, they only picked 8 boys and 8 girls. And they would offer them, so the top 8 boys and top 8 girls in the province, and they would provide them with free training with the best coaches in the country, and just basically try to help those players become professional players. And I was fortunate enough to be selected in those players, so that's when tennis really became serious for me. I remember the day my dad got the email that I had been selected was one of the best days of my childhood. I felt like I had made it. It was so exciting. And for 3 years, I was training along some of the best athletes in Canada. Some who are professional tennis players now, like Bianca Andreescu. She won a Grand Slam. She's won a U.S. Open.
So that was around the same time you were in the same places as
these professional athletes.
Athletes.
They were 8 or 9, just like me. But
Wow.
now they're professional athletes. Like they're stuck with it, and they've made millions from the sport of tennis, which is crazy. But yeah, from that age, I got used to competition. I got used to seeing what hard work is. Training with those people, with those 8 top boys and 8 top girls in the province, you feel the hard work. You know, they're putting in work, and
the necessity.
Yeah, that what it takes to be.
Yeah.
And I felt that it got to when I got a little bit older, around 11, 12. It was at a point where it's like, am I going to just commit to tennis, focus on the tennis, or is academics still important for me? And as you know, the Persian families, the values they have is academics is more traditional, more important. And my parents, I started playing a little bit less, started having less lessons, more school stuff, and then the work that those guys were putting in, other players, it just started to show, and and basically the level difference grew. And I think when I turned 12 was when I was replaced. So that every year they would have a tryout, 400, 500 people would show up, and if they felt that there was someone better than they had in the 8s, they would replace them. And after a couple of years, I got replaced. I was still playing a lot of competitive tennis. It didn't mean I was not good anymore. I was still playing provincials. I was playing a lot of tournaments. And when I got to the age of 16, that's when I knew I wanted to really focus on school and become a doctor. And since then, my life changed a lot, but tennis has still been a big part of it. Since then, since I turned 18, I've been coaching tennis part-time as well, and I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of high-performance athletes, a lot of players who are from the age of 10 to 18 I've worked with that are playing in high-level tournaments, and it's really good to be helping them better their game, and teaching them from the lessons that I had learned when I was playing competitive tennis.
Yeah. So I want to touch on one thing. You said that your family being traditional kind of pushed you towards the more academic pursuit.
That's right.
However, I do know from just our personal conversations that it wasn't necessarily that you were just so pushed to be a doctor.
Yeah.
Although you considered it, you ended up being very still professional compared to the population, because of course, when we're talking about 1 in 100 people, we're talking about excellence, right? And you were excellent in that sense. But of course, then when you go from that 1 percentile to the 0.1 percentile, there's a huge shift, and that is what you couldn't attain, rightfully so.
And that's
because
why,
you
and when I look back on things, I have no regrets, and I think my parents were really wise to kind of encourage me into the academic route, because now that I'm actually even more involved in the sport of tennis, I'm coaching a lot of these high performance players. I see the level of competition, and I see what it takes to get to that level where you're actually going to be making money from professional tennis, and it's not easy. Even if I had quit school and I had put in 8 hours a day, it's a tough sport to make. Only top 200, top 150 in the world get to make a living out of tennis, and it just doesn't make sense. And I know players who were number 1 in Canada for decades, and they weren't able to make it. So it's a very risky game, and you really got to know if that's what's for you. And it's a huge passion of mine, but looking back on it, I have no regrets that I decided to transition into something else and focus on the academics. And for the past 6 years now, getting into med school has been a big focus.
Yeah.
And it's finally this year, after a long journey of 6 years, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of failures, a lot of low moments, I finally had the honor of getting some acceptances and looking excited to start medical school in the fall.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in itself though, you are still competing, but your sport is a little different. You're competing in academics.
Yeah.
And of course, as a result, you're seeing that you're getting accepted into these med schools, which in itself, very challenging.
Yeah, that was not easy as well. I encountered many challenges trying to get into medical school. I applied 3 cycles and was not successful at all. Did not have any acceptances. Last year's cycle, I got my first interview. I was waitlisted and then found out a week before classes start that I wasn't gonna end up getting in, and that was really tough because then I knew I have to wait a whole nother year. But looking back on all of it, I think it was actually beautiful. Like the whole journey was beautiful. I'm glad that I had those 2 years off after I graduated from my undergrad. During those 2 years, I got to really work on myself as a person. I don't think I was ready for medical school right at the age of 22. At the age of 22, I feel like medical school is a big commitment, and the growth I've had over these past 2 years has, I feel like, gotten me ready to start medical school. And it's just, I haven't done anything crazy these last 2 years, but I just been trying to live, just try to be out there, to try to coach a little bit of tennis, try to try to volunteer at different hospitals, get different experiences, and then also understand that the time I have right now is very rare and special in the case that this is the last couple of months or like the last couple of years is the only time that I'm going to be around all my friends and family. I knew that once I get into med school, I'm probably going to move away, which is going to happen in a couple of months, either somewhere farther in Ontario or maybe even in the States. And I know I'm gonna be away from family and friends, and I'm gonna miss these times. I'm gonna look back and I wish when I had all that free time and I was hanging out with my friends and family. So I'm trying to just make the most of that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to recap, moved to Canada, and as a kid, you just had a regular childhood.
Yeah.
Watched YTV like me. Watched
of course. Yeah, iCarly.
At 3:30, right?
Yeah.
iCarly. Yeah. I love that show. And as you grew up, you actually saw that there's a potential for tennis, and then, and what's interesting is that in all of these stages of your life, all of these chapters, you gain a skill which at the time you're not even realizing that you're gaining, transfer it over, and it's almost like you have an extra gear in your gearbox when you're competing in different sports or the same sport. And so for you're in tennis, you learn about competition. You learn that when there's more people involved, when you're any size fish in any size pond, right? That there is always other fish and there's always competition because every fish needs resources, and sometimes those resources can be limited, right? And it is the case in both tennis, which is very competitive, and medicine, and which is both competitive. So from tennis, you realize, okay, I could take this pro, I cannot take this pro. If I don't take this pro, my alternative is I do med school. Now you're weighing med school and tennis, and you see, okay, well, I have more of an affinity towards medicine, and this is somewhat of a passion of mine, and also having that traditional bias, which there's nothing wrong with. I also have it, and you chose to pursue medicine and then transfer that skill, which we're going to talk about in a minute, from tennis. You bring it to medicine, and then you use those same skill sets, learn a little bit more, and develop yourself further to the point where you finish your undergrad degree, which was from McMaster, right? We didn't talk about this, but this is where we met. We met at McMaster. We met at our science degree, and so from that, you finish, and you every time it's like a round of tryouts. So you try out, you don't get in the first time, and try again, you're resilient. Number one, you're resilient. But number two is that in the time that you are waiting to try out again,
Yeah.
you're actually using that time to, gain more experience, gain more skills, so that the next tryout you're going to be a little bit faster, a little bit better, right? You know a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then second round of tryouts, and then the third round of tryouts, and now you're in. And now you're in, which congrats to you, by the way.
Thank you.
Now you're in. And so at this point in your life, you're just so grateful for, now that you're looking back, you're grateful, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, of course, I'm grateful. I know it's not easy to get the things I wanted. And then also the biggest lesson, like the things that you were saying before about how one skill transfers to the other thing, is like, you could argue that, I becoming a doctor, all that tennis, all that 10 years of tennis I played was wasted, or like it was a waste of my time, but I disagree with that, because I learned in that 10 years of playing that high level competitive tennis, I learned so many lessons that the classrooms or textbooks couldn't really teach me, and I think the biggest lesson out of all of it was probably adaptability. Like, I just had to become an adaptable person, especially in the sport of tennis. It's a sport where it's individual, you're just by yourself. And I don't know if you know, like people watching, like you don't get any coaching during a tennis match. You're not allowed any coaching. So you got to figure things out by yourself during a match. Things go wrong. I don't know, your opponent might cheat you. You're just playing bad. You're making mistakes. You're not. And you got to somehow overcome those barriers. You got to and keep thinking of a way to basically strategize your game plan in order to defeat your opponent. And that skill of adaptability and not giving up was something I've carried over into when I started my journey in medicine. Because first in my undergrad, I did not have an easy time. A lot of my courses I was struggling with. I knew I had to get A's.
Very hard.
I knew I had to get A's in order to have a competitive GPA for med school. And I wasn't doing well. And then I realized I gotta change my study habits. Like I didn't have the right study habits. So I learned how to study, and then I wrote the MCAT. My MCAT, the first time I wrote it was a disaster. That wasn't even close to what I wanted. And then the second time I wrote it, it was like just a crazy increase between the two scores, where like I had maybe like 7-8 med school interviews now, and like almost every interview they asked me, how did you manage to improve your MCAT score so high, so much? And I think they see that as a valuable skill for a med school student as well, to be resilient and and just be adaptable.
And resilience, adaptability is by far, by the way, I want to say this, I have reviewed now in the last 2 years, I've reviewed over 50 books. Right? This has been an undertaking of mine personally. And in my review, the number one thing that they all had in common, all books, and it wasn't just business, it wasn't just self-improvement, it was fiction, non-fiction, business, it was about adventure, everything, right? And in almost every single book, number one concept they all talked about was the skill of adaptability. And it sounds like it's impacted you, and you would even, I think, would agree, impacted you the most.
Yeah, because the trait of adaptability, I would say, also correlates like heavily with the ability to regulate your emotions. And I think having emotional regulation is the number one skill for any human being, because in this journey of life, we've both seen there's so many ups and downs. A lot of things don't go your way. People may betray you, people you love, and then people you love might get sick, they might die. And basically, if you could look at life that way, you could say it's a very sad life, because a lot of things go bad. But you got to have that emotional regulation and understand that just this journey is beautiful in itself. All the feelings you have, you got to embrace them and just try to keep moving forward.
Always, always an up and always a down. Like I said in my intro, there's always a peak, there's always a valley in the journey that we call life. These valleys felt much longer and much more painful than the peaks felt enjoyable and fruitful.
That's right.
Although the valley was much shorter than you initially estimated, right? And the challenge was honestly not that big of a
Not
deal,
that big of-
right?
yeah,
Like
whenever
you
in
went.
hindsight, yeah, you always realize it wasn't that bad. And then also I always tell my students too now, like the tennis players I coach, a lot of them start winning some matches and they get a little bit too hyped up. And I like to also tell them that, this is one of my favorite quotes I always tell them, is that when you win, you're not as good as you think you are, and when you lose, you're not as bad as you think you are.
Nice.
Yeah, so it just, I think that's a quote to always have in your head, because when things are going your way, good, but just, stay calm, keep doing what you're doing.
Stay humble.
Stay humble,
Grounded.
stay grounded, because tough times are gonna come. You know what's gonna happen again.
Statistically impossible for
exactly.
tough times to just disappear.
Yeah, exactly. And life wouldn't be what it is if it was just always good times.
Yeah.
So. I would say those are the biggest lessons I've learned, and I just turned 24, and I'm sure that in the next decade I'll learn even more meaningful lessons.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll bring you back on this podcast.
Episode 100 maybe?
Episode 100.
Yeah.
And I mean, even in the middle, you're going to come back on this podcast,
Yeah.
I think sooner than we think.
Of course.
And you'll talk to us about the first month or first year of med school.
Yeah,
You'll talk
of
to us
course.
how you're adapting to the new environments you're going to be put
Yeah.
in. You're
Yeah.
going to be talking to us one day about how difficult it might be to be a doctor, right?
Yeah.
To how difficult it is, or it isn't,
Yeah.
but you could talk about all of these things.
The whole
And
journey, yeah.
And the whole point of this podcast right here
Yeah.
is to really bring you guys the evolution and the entire story almost of, I wish I could start this sooner, when you had that first tryout
Yeah.
for Canada and you were picked as a part of the 8 boys and the 8 girls, right? And I can, but now in this way you're going to see me, Poorshad, some of the other people on this podcast that are going to be staples. You're going to see how they evolve. You're going to see how they become who they are, and you can even talk to us about how this trait of resilience and adaptability has been by far the most used and useful skill for you, even when you're a doctor, right?
Yeah, for sure. I know that these lessons we already discussed are gonna apply into the future in my career. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see where this journey takes me. I know it's going to be a lot more challenges, but I'm just excited.
You're ready. You're excited.
I've been waiting for it. I've been waiting for it.
When you get problems, you can either think of how it's so upsetting that there's a problem because you just want life to be easy, or you could be so excited that now, for the first time in however long, opportunity for you to exercise your problem-solving abilities and realize that as long as you're focused on finding a solution, there's no such thing as a problem.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And the one thing I really want to hit on in today's podcast, and we'll even leave it at this because I really think this is by far the most important thing that we've talked about, which relates to adaptability.
Mm-hmm.
One time, me and Poorshad were having a conversation, and you said to me, I asked you, what would be the number one thing as an athlete that you have to focus on other than having the drive, realizing the necessity for competition and putting in those hours and becoming almost obsessed with winning?
Yeah.
What is the one thing you would say that would be a make it or break it in all of the tennis matches you've done and all of the things you've seen? And what was it that you told me?
Yeah, I think I told you about selective memory, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Selective memory.
Yeah, it's a term you hear a lot, even in professional sports. A lot of soccer players, a lot of coaches talk about it. It's basically the ability to just bounce back very quickly from the mistakes that you make. In sports, a lot of times, whatever sport you're playing, you might not hit the right shots. Make a mistake that leads to the other team's success. And you got to be able to just quickly get that mistake out of your head and maintain the confidence that you had in your game prior to making that mistake.
Wow.
And just being able to have that confidence no matter what, even when you make those mistakes, say that I'm going to try again. I maybe made a mistake not right now, but I'm going to forget about it and I'm going to try again. I'm going to try again. And those are the athletes that make it to the top level and who are the champions.
Nice. Yeah, so in a nutshell, because we know the slippery slope If you start thinking about one negative thing, now you're thinking about another, and now it seems overwhelming. Now it seems like I'm just making mistakes. Today's not my day.
That's right. Yeah.
Whereas you're saying
it's very easy to get down that.
It's down that path.
Yeah.
And you're saying I just made a mistake, and I know I made a mistake, but I'm gonna focus on everything that just went right, and I'm gonna make sure that the next time this happens, I'm not gonna be thinking about this mistake and let it create a slippery slope situation for me, and two, I'm gonna take advantage of the situation. I'm gonna score, and that is, you would say, the most common mentality amongst all professional athletes.
Yeah.
And if we were to look at life as a sport, which I believe it is, if you wanted to be a professional athlete in life, a veteran of life, you have to have this thing called selective memory. I'm not saying that you shouldn't focus on your mistakes. Reflect on it when it's the time.
Yeah.
And assess the situation, understand when it isn't the time to be reflecting, right? Because it's not always the time to be reflecting. If you want to survive, you have to forget everything else other than survival. If you're running from something, you can't be thinking about, I wasn't running fast enough for the last 5 minutes. You just you stop thinking about that. You start running faster.
It's different.
Who cares what you've done? You start running faster.
It becomes innate a little bit, and that's why I think practice is the most important thing, because practice makes things just come innate to you, come naturally to you. You know, repetition, doing something over and over again.
So to wrap it all up, this was great, and I really hope that we've touched on everything, and we don't look back at this and think, I wish I said this too, but if we do, we'll bring it to you in another podcast, of course. Poorshad, a future med school student, a future doctor, a professional athlete, he was the MVP of our McMaster sports team, of our tennis team, is by far one of the best people I know and most motivating people I know. And in his life, he's experienced a lot, and he's been through a lot of ups and downs, and some of the things he's learned: remain humble, be always resilient, and number one thing he points out to us is selective memory, which if you skip that part, definitely go back and look at it. It's by far the most important part of this podcast, I'd say. And I'm personally so excited, and I hope you're so excited for the next podcast he is on, because more likely than not, that will be when he is in medical school, already experienced some of the ups and downs of that, and
I'll have more to share in the medicine world for sure. A lot about the med school student experiences, and that'll be exciting for sure. And I'm excited to see where this podcast goes.
Thank you.
It was truly an honor to be the first guest.
Thank you. I'm so happy that you're the first person on.
And I'm looking forward to be back.
Yeah, for sure. And I and everyone watching wish you luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Well, I personally am so glad that we got through that podcast, and I don't know if you saw, but we almost gave up on Poorshad being the first guest, which would have obviously not been good, because that was a killer podcast. I want to congratulate us. So in this last week, what has been done? We've put up a website, which I have a really important announcement on. And I am working on some merch concepts that I'm going to put on my website, and if you like it, should you like it, then I would go ahead and actually make some stuff and get people to model it. It would be fun. And we've also hit a 500 views milestone, a milestone for me personally. Of course, the actual podcast is around 100, and then we have a short around 400. We have every social media platform that I can think of, all the major ones. So we have Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and we have a LinkedIn page, and I'm working on a Facebook page. I've kind of been lazy, but hey, I made a website, so come on. And we updated the intro, which I really hope you like. And of course, the entire channel is a work in progress, but we are working on it together, and I really appreciate your input. I was going to say income, which would not make sense. And someone commented W on the short that got over 400 views. And if you're watching, I thank you, because of course, as a first comment, I loved seeing that, and I love that energy, and put that more of that positivity into the universe. anyone wants to comment W, go right ahead. I don't mind at all. And yeah, so my important announcement is this. All you have to do is go on my website, Nima.com, and it says Live Life in Style. And if you just press I'm ready, then it will take you right onto my scheduler. It's also on like challenge accepted. It says life's a challenge. And if you press accept, it'll also do the same in some other places. But really, if you just go to talktonima.com and it says Live Life in Style and click I'm ready, I've opened up my schedule 4 days a week. You can schedule a 30-minute phone call with me and we can get to know each other. And yeah, it's a limited time thing. I really don't think I will ever do it again, but since I just kickstarted this channel, let's get to know each other. Other than that, thank you so much for tuning in into the first podcast. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I will see you on the next one. Have a great day.